In 1499, Cesare Borgia had a problem. He had sent one of his lieutenants, a man named Ramiro de Orco, to bring order to the Romagna region of central Italy. And Ramiro had done exactly what was asked of him. He'd been brutal, efficient, completely effective. He pacified the region through fear and violence, establishing the kind of order that Cesare needed to consolidate his power there. But here's the thing about ruling through terror. Eventually, the people stop being afraid and start being angry, and an angry population is a threat. So Cesare had a second problem. Ramiro had done his job so well and so visibly that all the hatred and resentment of an entire region was now pulled at his feet. The solution Cesare arrived at was extraordinary in its coldness. He had Ramiro arrested, put on trial for crimes against the people, and then executed publicly, his body displayed in the town square for all to see. The instrument of terror gone, justice served. The people were delighted. Cesare walked away with clean hands, a grateful population, and a fully pacified region. The dirty work was done. The man who did it was gone. And the man who had ordered all of it looked like the hero. That is Law 26 of the 48 Laws of Power. Keep your hands clean. And I want to be honest with you up front. This is one of the most morally uncomfortable laws in the entire book. We are going to sit with that discomfort, not run from it. Because the point of understanding this law isn't to turn you into Cesare Borgia. It's to make sure you are never Ramiro de Orco. Let's start with the core premise. Because Green is making a more nuanced argument than most people expect. The obvious reading of this law is avoid doing anything bad. Stay clean. Don't get involved in anything that could come back to haunt you. That reading is there, but it's only the surface. The deeper argument is about perception management in environments where mistakes and conflict are genuinely unavoidable. Here's the thing, mistakes happen, messy decisions happen. In any complex organization, any political environment, any competitive field, there will be moments where something goes wrong, where someone needs to be the bearer of bad news, where a decision has to be made that will make someone unhappy. Green's position is that how you handle those moments, specifically how visible your involvement is, determines more about your long-term power than almost any other factor. He opens this law with a line that I think is the sharpest insight in the entire chapter. He says people of power are undone, not by the mistakes they make, but by the way they deal with them. Let that land for a moment. The mistake itself is almost never the fatal thing. What destroys people is being visibly associated with the mistake in a way they can't escape. Once that association is locked in, once the narrative becomes this person is responsible for this failure, all the context in the world doesn't change the perception. The residue sticks. And in environments where reputation is everything, residue is lethal. The law breaks into two distinct tools, the scapegoat and the cat's paw. They serve different purposes, and it's worth understanding each one properly. The scapegoat is defensive. It's what you use when something has already gone wrong. Someone needs to absorb the blame because if no one does, the blame will diffuse outward and eventually land on whoever is most visible, most powerful, most convenient. Powerful people understand this and they move first. They identify a person or a structure that can credibly carry the responsibility for the failure, and they redirect attention there before the narrative has time to settle. The Chinese general example Green uses is almost clinical in its clarity. The general had miscalculated his army's food supply. Rations were cut, troops were angry, mutiny was forming. Rather than explain himself, rather than apologize, which Green argues only deepens and festers, he had his chief supply officer executed for mismanagement. The troops had their villain. The threat evaporated. The general survived. Now, and I want to be clear about this, I'm not endorsing the execution of your colleagues. I'm describing a dynamic. Because the same structure plays out at every level, every day, in ways far less extreme. The executive who loses a major account and restructures their team before anyone looks too closely at their own decisions. The politician who launches an inquiry into systemic failure the moment a scandal breaks, transforming themselves from subject to investigator. The manager who arranges for a third-party consultant to deliver bad news, then expresses sympathy about it alongside everyone else. The structure is identical, only the stakes change. The cat's paw is offensive. It's proactive rather than reactive. and it's considerably more sophisticated. The term comes from an old fable about a monkey who wanted chestnuts from a fire, but he didn't want to burn his own hands, so he grabbed the paw of a nearby cat and used it to pull the chestnuts out instead. He got what he wanted. The cat got burned, the monkey walked away unmarked. In practice, this means using another person, wittingly or unwittingly, to accomplish something that would be costly for you to do directly. And no one in history executed this more elegantly than Cleopatra. Cleopatra needed her political rivals eliminated. Her own siblings, who had rival claims to the Egyptian throne, had to go. But think about what it would have meant for her to move against them directly. A queen having her own family killed. The optics would have been catastrophic. The backlash from the Egyptian court, from Rome, from the population she needed to govern would have been enormous. Even if she succeeded militarily, she would have paid for it in reputation for the rest of her reign. So she didn't do it directly. She seduced Julius Caesar. Then, after Caesar's assassination, she did it again with Marc Antony. And as those relationships deepened, as her lovers became her most powerful allies, she oriented their interests so that eliminating her rivals became their project. Their idea, their armies, their energy, their political capital. Here's the thing that makes this so remarkable. Caesar and Antony were not stupid men. These were among the most powerful and strategically sophisticated figures in the ancient world. And they still found themselves doing Cleopatra's work. Because she hadn't manipulated them through trickery. She had aligned their genuine interests with her own goals so completely that acting on her behalf felt to them like acting on their own. That is the cat's paw at its highest expression. Not brute manipulation, architecture. You build the environment so that other people's natural movements accomplish what you need done and they never feel used because in some real sense they weren't. This is where game theory becomes genuinely interesting. In any strategic environment, the value of an action isn't just what it accomplishes, it's what it reveals about you. Every direct move you make is a signal. It tells people what you want, how you think, where you're willing to go. Once your opponents can model your behavior, they can anticipate and counter it. But when you act through others, you introduce layers of separation. Your fingerprints aren't on the outcome. You retain optionality. And your reputation, which is its own form of strategic capital, stays completely intact. Now here's where I want to complicate this, because Green is honest about the risks and most summaries gloss over them. The cat's paw and the scapegoat are not clean solutions. They are highly volatile ones. Green is explicit. If the screen is ever lifted, if the manipulation is revealed, if the person being used figures out they've been used, if someone connects the dots in public, the whole dynamic inverts. Suddenly, every misfortune in your environment gets attributed to you. Events you had nothing to do with get folded into the narrative. The thing that was protecting you becomes the thing that destroys you. The fall is harder precisely because of how high you were. You weren't just someone who made a mistake. You were someone who tried to hide it and used others to absorb the damage. That story is much worse. This is why Green emphasizes something that most readings of this law ignore entirely. The importance of appearing genuinely civil and competent as a constant baseline. The law isn't just about deflecting blame when things go wrong. It's about maintaining a reputation so consistently positive that the idea of you being behind anything unsavory simply doesn't compute for most people. The person who is known as fair, efficient, and reasonable has infinitely more room to maneuver than the person who is already suspected of being political. When things go wrong around the first person, nobody immediately looks at them. When things go wrong around the second person, everyone does. There's a reversal to this law that Green gives more airtime to than usual. There are moments where being visibly implicated in something difficult actually serves you. Where showing that you are willing to carry the weight, absorb the cost, stand in the blast radius of something messy, that reads as strength, as integrity, as the kind of leadership that generates deep loyalty. Green points to situations where a leader who takes visible responsibility for a failure binds their followers more tightly than one who always escapes clean. There's something psychologically compelling about a person who doesn't run. It signals certainty, security, the absence of fear. The catch is precision. You can afford to own a mistake when doing so is controlled, strategic, and framed correctly, when the failure is modest, when the confession is voluntary rather than forced. when the gesture reads as magnanimous rather than desperate. In those conditions, accountability is a tool. But the moment you're cornered, the moment the choice is being made for you, taking responsibility stops being a power move and starts being just the thing that happened to you. So what does this look like in practice? Let me give you one scenario that I think captures the whole law. Imagine a senior leader at a company. Their division has been underperforming for 2 quarters. The pressure from above is building. They know a reckoning is coming. The unsophisticated move is to wait, to keep working hard and hope the numbers turn around before anyone looks too closely. The result of that approach is that when the reckoning arrives, they are visibly associated with the failure. Their name is on it. The story writes itself. The sophisticated move starts months earlier. They commission an external review, a consulting firm brought in to assess the division's structure and performance. That firm produces a report identifying inefficiencies and recommending changes, including headcount reductions. The leader then implements those recommendations, expressing appropriate concern for the affected people while being seen to be executing on an objective external assessment rather than making arbitrary cuts. Notice what has happened. The same outcome, underperforming division restructured, people let go, has been achieved, but the architecture of blame is completely different. The difficult decisions were handed down from a process, not made by a person. The leader is now the one managing the transition responsibly, not the one who caused the disruption. And when the numbers eventually improve, the credit flows back to them clearly because there's no competing narrative about their role in the failure. Their hands throughout all of it stayed clean. That's not hypothetical. That's Tuesday in organizations all over the world. The thing I keep coming back to with this law is how clearly it illustrates the gap between what people think power looks like and what it actually looks like. Most people imagine powerful people as visible, decisive, their hands all over everything, taking credit, making moves, being the center of all the action, and sometimes that's true. But the really durable operators, the ones who stay in the game for decades, who survive multiple cycles of catastrophe, who keep accumulating while others rise and fall around them, they tend to be remarkable for how little can be directly attributed to them. They are, as Green puts it, paragons of civility and efficiency. Nothing sticks to them, not because nothing has ever gone wrong around them, things always go wrong for everyone, but because they have arranged the environment so that the fallout has somewhere else to go. Ramiro de Orco did everything Cesare asked. He was effective, loyal, and completely expendable. The moment his usefulness was exhausted, he became more valuable as a symbol of justice than as a functioning lieutenant. That story is 500 years old and playing out in some form somewhere right now. The question this law asks is always the same one. In the situation you're currently in, do you know which role you're in? That's Law 26. Next, we're on Law 27, play on people's need to believe to create a cult-like following. That one is going to be a conversation. I'll see you there.